Okay, good evening, everyone. I am the Mad Computer Scientist. This is just going to be the tech check part where I make sure everything is working correctly, which I think it is, but we're going to find out in a few seconds here. Thank you for those of you who came in to join me, but if you want to skip ahead like a minute or two, that is understandable as well. Please do so. All right, so let's actually just get to my channel, get to the live stream, and see if I have my sound going like I think I do. Do I have my sound going? Well, I might going like I think I do. All right, I do. I also need to make sure the sound is going through my headphones. And now the question is, do I have sound on the video, which I'll find out shortly. It is very quiet. That is an issue. So because it's very quiet, we need to figure out how to fix that. So I don't know why that's the way. Right, let's turn that up a bit, and let's see if resharing the screen fixes the issue. I don't know why it was that way. All right, so we're going to try again.
Guess what he doesn't have? He doesn't have an understanding of how the universe.
All right. Up a bit, and let's see if resharing the screen fixes the issue. I don't know why it was that way. Still waiting to see if we have the screen coming up.
Of how the universe.
All right, looks like we're good. Looks like it's a good sound. All right, so this is Terrence Howard on the PBD Podcast. Now, admittedly, I have never heard of the PBD Podcast before, and this apparently is a 2-hour-long podcast, so we're not going to get through it all tonight. Terrence Howard is claiming that his patents were stolen. Now, if this is the VR patent he believes he has, or at least has said he has, this is an interesting thing because I would personally like to know how it would be stolen from him, since VR was invented before he was born. But before we get into that, I think it's time to do some of the necessary YouTube stuff. And please remember, we are trying to get to 512 subscribers. We've got quite a ways to go. So if you would like to do me a favor, please remember to hit that like button. If you enjoy my content, please hit subscribe. And if you do subscribe, be sure to hit that notification bell. And once you hit the notification bell, make sure you ring it to the point where you will always get the most recent updates for this channel. Now, we have covered Terrence Howard on this channel before, and on this channel, I normally like to cover math, computer science, and technology topics that are of interest to me. Also, let's change the mic so it's closer to me, and so you can hear me a little bit better. This is part of a series I like to call Faulty Logic Fridays. For those of you who are following me live, you've probably noticed that tonight is not Friday. You are correct about that. The main issue with this is I got relatively busy this weekend. I had things to do Friday that I did, then I got roped into doing a stand-up comic routine, which went better than I expected, and Saturday I had to attend an Out of the Darkness suicide prevention walk, as well as I had something to go to Saturday, which was just my normal live-action gaming event that happens once a month. So I apologize for this being late, but it's better late than never, isn't it?
Works.
You don't think Eric Weinstein
he has no understanding.
Entire quantum mechanics built on this model
Is wrong.
or he's bring another dimension. Okay.
If another country gets their hands on this,
It's an end of America.
what have you found?
If I have to go to China, they won't hesitate a moment to use linchpin, which they're forcing me to do. Do you know that they took away my passport?
Why does this matter?
Puffy invited me
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
He's like, I think he's trying to f you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh.
I had no idea we're going to go this direction with the podcast.
If it's wrong, you'll never hear from me again. I'll walk away. But if I'm right,
All right, I'll give PBD credit for that one. I'm at least interested in what he has to say now, because I have to wonder what any of that had to do with anything. And no, Terrence Howard, China does not want your technology. They want technology that actually has a chance of working for what it's supposed to do. Your linchpin is not the genius thing you think it is.
So for most of us, when we think about Terrence Howard, we think about an actor. We think about Iron Man. We think about different movies he's been in, right, all over the place. But one day in 2019 when he...
Well, I might have thought that a while ago, until you're about to bring up what you're about to bring up here.
retires, he talks about he has some findings. He has certain patents. He has 90-plus patents. Goes on Rogan's podcast, talks about it openly. Then Rogan brings Weinstein, Eric. They have a great debate together.
Wait, you're not even going to bring up what he is most famous for, which is his proof that 1 × 1 = 2? Well, that's a good choice not to bring up, but it's an odd choice and not one I would have made.
And it was interesting saying, I need peer review. And Eric says, you're not a peer to review what you have. And then Terrence and I start speaking, and he says, I want you to put my white papers through any kind of AI to look at it and have some folks look at it. So I said, Terrence.
Oh, my God. Terrence, putting your proofs and papers through AI will not prove that you're correct. People really need to learn what large language models are designed to do.
So why don't we do this? I'm going to invite a guest. He didn't know who it was going to be. We invited a current NASA employee, 17 years with NASA, Dr. Yu, physicist, spacecraft subsystem manager, spacecraft fluids and structure branch. He comes in, they sit down, they go through things, and I thought he was going to correct them on everything, but he actually agreed with them on a few different things. And then we also talked about his career. We talked about Iron Man. He said something on Diddy I've never heard him say before. Never. I've never heard him say before. And he says, I've never done movies like
Well, they might be big enough to do that.
this. And the reason why you never give up your man card. I'm like, Terrence, what do you mean man card? He said,
But I did eventually win the claim against Joe Rogan.
you know what I'm talking about? I said, are you saying what I think you're talking about? Yes. Then he tells a story of the time Diddy invites him over to his house. And it got so weird that, well, you're going to have to watch it for yourself. Having said that, enjoy this podcast with the one and only Terrence Howard with an appearance by Dr. Yu.
30 seconds.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me.
Adam, what's your point? The future looks bright.
My handshake is better than anything I ever signed. Right here.
You are a one-of-one.
my son's right there.
I don't think I've ever said this before.
How you doing?
I'm incredible right now.
Yeah.
Grateful to be here. It's
I see he hasn't given up on wearing a hat with a hoodie.
been a long time. You guys have asked me to come a few times, but I wanted to come when I had something special to talk about.
Yeah, and I'm excited about it. And we're doing it the right way today. The reason for it is because when you and I were speaking, we're going back and forth. And Pat, can you read this? Can you read that? Can you read this? And I'm reading it. It's as if I'm reading a different language, right? Because this is not my space. I'm not in this business. I'm not I'm good in numbers when it comes down to financials, but different when the numbers that we're talking about here. However, we reached out to a couple people to come down while we're having this conversation. And we wanted to get somebody qualified. So we got a hold of Dr. Weiping Yu, okay, PhD, just to kind of give you a proper introduction. This is his business card from NASA, okay? He's been with NASA for 17 years. His business card says physicist and spacecraft subsystem manager, spacecraft fluids and structure branch, In a minute, we're going to have him come in. He's been involved in a lot of different conversations. He knows Eric Weinstein. He's seen the conversation that you had with Eric Weinstein and with Rogan, which was great. The 4-hour one that you guys did. So
You would really have to stretch out to call that conversation great. Weinstein should have been hitting Terrence Howard hard on that one. Even though Weinstein is himself a pseudoscientist, Weinstein is much better at math than Terrence Howard is, which you would expect from someone with a PhD in mathematics.
we'll get into that here in a minute, okay? And I'll bring him on and he'll grab a seat right next to him. We'll get into it. However, for the audience, if you don't mind, because the first time I heard about you going this direction, I'm a big fan of your work. When you came in, the first thing I said is the character, Harvey, Borden, from
Borden.
fighting, right? The way you would speak, the way you would move. But this is the first time we saw you talking about you leaving Hollywood, Rob. If you want to play this clip, go for it.
Terrence Howard here. You made huge headlines when you said after you complete these 15 episodes of Empire, you got to walk away for a while or forever.
For good. I mean, everyone keeps trying to tell me don't say it's forever, but I.
Oh, please walk away from this, Mr. Howard. Preferably into your nearest therapist office, I think. Because none of what you've said is accurate.
It's been 37 years pretending to be people so that people can pretend to watch and enjoy what I'm doing when I've made some discoveries in my own.
Or, Mr. Howard, let's look at this another way. Perhaps they actually really do enjoy your acting skill. You are a good actor from what I've seen.
Personal life with the science that, Pythagoras was searching for. I was able to open up the flower of life properly and find the real.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, I've seen this so many times. Why are we playing this again?
Wave conjugations that we've been looking for 10,000 years. Why would I continue, walking on water for tips?
It's impossible.
When I.
So what got you to the point of being ready to say this to the world? Because this changed the game.
Well, we had introduced linchpin years before, and was talking about linchpin being the common factor, the universal constitution, but no one would take it seriously.
The universal constitution? The universal constitution. What does that mean? I have a feeling, much like I've seen you do before, Mr. Howard, you're stringing words together without understanding what they mean. I think you're trying to say something like the universal constant, and that doesn't mean what you're trying to use it here as. It's usually the speed of light.
We talked about this grand unifying supersymmetry of the linchpin.
Oh my.
That it showed how the universe behaved in contractive or expansive places. We had showed the ubiquitous nature of linchpin. Nobody would.
I think I referred to this type of nonsense before as something computer scientists would call a context-free grammar. He's making well-constructed sentences that follow grammar rules most of the time, but it doesn't mean anything.
Take it seriously. So then we decided to let's now challenge the idea of gravity. And we, in comparison to a resonance model, like the universe is not based upon force, but based upon resonance, but based upon harmonic frequencies. So we decided to let's put the linchpin in the proper place, and since we are saying that this is the common factor that everything comes from it, let's put a number of linchpins in rotation and see if we can rebuild the planet Saturn. Well, we were able to do that without gravity, without dark energy, without dark matter.
Wait, why would dark matter and dark energy be involved in planetary formation? I'm not a physicist, but I'm pretty sure that's not the way that works. I'm pretty sure baryonic matter and normal energy help with planetary formation, Mr. Howard.
And without.
Oh, yes, purple rhymes with orange. He did a simulation, as he calls it, in Blender, which is animation software, where he does come up with the planet Saturn. Now, you can actually do some kind of simulations using the scripting Python-style language in Blender, but if you actually look at what he's doing, there is a constant that the programmers didn't name that is equivalent to gravity.
Animation. Literally rebuilt the planet Saturn in a simulation with the hexagon at the top of it. And we were like, okay, they will take this seriously. So when I went to we did this the day before I came to the Emmys. So I was just so.
You know, Mr. Howard, if you pay people to say they're going to take you seriously, they will say people are going to take you seriously, even if they don't mean it.
Excited to say, hey, we don't have to worry about this God gravity.
You did what the day before Emmys?
We did the rebuilding the planet Saturn. That's at the very beginning of my book. The same thing I showed on Joe Rogan.
Right.
And I'm like waiting for people to respond, but they immediately took it like, oh, he's crazy. He's talking about he's going to build the planet Saturn. No.
I don't think it was just your physics, Mr. Howard. I think it was the bit where you tried to redefine basic math that caught most people's attention. Your physics are just icing on the cake.
I was rebuilding it in a simulator, the same way they've rebuilt planets or tried to rebuild the solar system or galaxies with dark matter, dark energy, and gravity. I was able to do it without that, and I thought that would mean something, but...
Please learn what these terms mean before you use them. You haven't used dark matter, dark energy, and any other term related to physics correctly yet.
I forgot you don't attack somebody's God. Gravity has been their God for a long, long time.
Who's God? The traditional scientists?
Science, all of the world. Gravity is their God.
If I'm on a set with you doing a movie, which you've been on many, many sets with some of the greatest actors of all time, and you're in the list of some of the greatest actors of all time yourself, would I meet this Terrence? Like, if we're sitting, we're not shooting, we're sitting, we're waiting for something, are you speaking to me like this or no?
This is the only Terrence there is. You know, I love acting. I love the emotional play associated with it. But what's more important right now than saving the planet, than saving the people on the planet, saving the animals on the planet, saving our entire solar system?
He's making sure I remember to clean the cat's litter box tonight.
Don't know what our responsibility is cosmically, but we have to get past this reef right now. We keep getting pushed back to the beach by the desire to suppress and to control everything.
We don't know what our responsibility cosmically is. What does that mean? I mean, I don't think any of us have a given responsibility to the cosmos, because the cosmos is much bigger than we are, and any responsibility we might have to it would be insignificant. Now, this doesn't mean we don't have responsibilities to our friends, our family, our jobs, organizations we belong to, and as a student, you'll have responsibilities as a student. But none of us are ever going to have a responsibility to the cosmos in its current state.
And so the only Terrence there is the one that's trying to change the world, that's trying to provide the free energy, that's trying to provide the new geometry that will allow us to fit with the universe instead of competing against the universe.
Which actors that you had conversations like this with were also interested and could hang with you?
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte. The great Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte. We've had wonderful conversations. We're doing a film called Investigating Sex in Germany, and we spent 2 months having the deepest conversation. He actually inspired me to keep going further. Before, he was just talking about the B12 shots and how it affects your body, but we had deep.
Well, I'm not sure how long I'm going to tonight. I know I'm not going to cover the full 2 hours of this podcast tonight. But I would love to actually, if I can, go long enough that I can actually go into someone else's stream But there are some people who I'd rather not stream in this time slot because I know they like to stream in this time slot.
Deep conversations. Him, Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges is an incredibly deep thinker. I would love to talk to Mel Gibson because Mel, I see his mind always jumping.
You haven't?
I haven't. Have never had the pleasure of meeting him.
You've
yet.
never met Mel Gibson?
Never met Mel Gibson.
That's an easy one to happen. I mean, it's a couple guys that know him could make the phone call.
Yeah, I enjoy his neurosynaptic reactions.
Meaning the way he views the world from a different lens.
I love his rhythm of his mind, how it clicks.
So is that before or after he's been drinking? Because I think you may need to keep up on some of the events regarding Mel Gibson, Mr. Howard.
People like that. But most people respond, in a quizzical way. But when you're challenging their status quo, when you're challenging, their basic arithmetic, because if you were looking at a grid of 1 times 1 equaling 1, it'd be a straight grid going out with just boxes.
Okay, technically you did challenge basic arithmetic. And everyone who passed basic arithmetic and went a little bit beyond that told you were absolutely wrong. Now, they might have had more nuanced positions after that, depending on how far they went. The most nuanced position I saw was someone saying, yes, Terrence Howard can come up with his own system of logic as long as it's consistent. And the main problem is that you are not consistent. One of the things you should do, Mr. Howard, if you want to be consistent in your system, is change the way division works also.
On a flat plane forever. Our universe doesn't behave that way. Our universe behaves by everything wrapping itself around, multiplies volumetrically. So what I've been talking about for the longest time is allowing our math to match what the physics work. What does the physical world look like? How does it behave? We can't imagine.
Mr. Howard, math is under no obligation to conform to physics. The physics has to conform to the math that describes it. That's probably not a good way of putting that. But math is a language, and we use math to describe physics. We don't use math to force physics to do what we want it to do. I think that is something you are misunderstanding. I'm not sure, given Mr. Howard's understanding of how squaring things works, I'm not sure he understands what volumetrically is either.
Throw imaginary structures out there unless the real structures aren't making sense, and the structures that they have.
And my guess is that Terrence Howard thinks the first derivative of Terrence Howard as War Machine is Don Cheadle.
Have as straight lines, platonic solids, they've been wrong from the beginning, because there are no straight lines. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The greater the action, the greater the reaction. The greater the reaction, greater the resistance. The greater the resistance, greater the curvature, which means
Okay, first off, none of that makes any sense. You would benefit from a high school physics course, Mr. Howard.
everything is curved. So measuring the universe with straight lines.
Everything is curved? Well, my monitor certainly is.
And with flat planes is an illogical and irrational thing to do if you're measuring curved, living, moving reality. And that is what they refuse to change. They've stopped believing that the world is flat, but they're still using flat mechanics to describe the universe.
You know, he could actually be referring to the idea that space-time is flat, which doesn't mean it's one-dimensional, Mr. Howard. It just means that more or less the cosmic background radiation is a uniform temperature throughout the universe. But somehow I doubt that.
Okay, so you go on Rogan first podcast, you guys talk, and then that leads to you going back with Rogan with Eric Weinstein, the 4-hour one that you guys did, right? And even I think Neil deGrasse Tyson did a video reacting to all the stuff that you had. Brian Keating did as well. I asked Brian Keating about the one document that you sent to me. I forwarded to him, and he read it, looked through it, and and I'll preface what he said. He's really trying to figure things out, going in the right. And he made a video talking about one area that he was wrong. I don't know if you've seen that video or not, but he seemed very much willing to sit down and have the conversation. But it almost seems like when even watching Weinstein, Eric with you, it's like, look, we love what you're doing, and
but stop doing it.
Yeah, but stop doing it because peer review. You're not one of our peers. You're not qualified enough to get a peer.
That is not what Eric was saying. Eric was basically saying, you don't know enough, you need to learn more. He was also letting Mr. Howard know that the 1 + 1 = 2 thing was wrong. Now, the problem is, Eric Weinstein either provided very little pushback, or as other people have pointed out, he was using math that was way above even my head. Not that that's hard, but
review, but we'll give you an opinion on this, right? That was kind of like the establishment side towards you. What was your biggest takeaway after your 4 hours with Eric and Joe, and what's happened ever since?
Well,
it wasn't maybe I'm wrong and maybe I should learn more, which it should have been, but that's because Eric Weinstein didn't communicate what he needed to do. Eric Weinstein was mostly there to get viewers for his own channel.
Gave Eric a great deal of grace. He was a little rude and cut me off a lot of times, but that's the nature of being in the position of authority. I had hoped that he would evaluate the geometry I gave him. I went to his.
I think you missed the point that even Joe Rogan was trying to get to you. You were talking to someone who actually was an expert in mathematics, telling you you don't know what you're talking about. Mr. Weinstein even used the analogy of him fighting with Joe Rogan in a UFC match. You quickly realized that Mr. Weinstein would lose that match, but you didn't realize that he was using an analogy because you going up against an actual mathematician with a PhD is about the same as Eric Weinstein fighting a trained UFC fighter. It's not going to go well for the person who doesn't have the necessary training. Now, this doesn't mean you can't be an autodidact. They do exist. But autodidacts are rare. And it's very rare that you get an autodidact to the same level that someone like Aaron Ra is at with phylogeny.
House 2 days later, and we had dinner, and I took buckets of proof of geometry, of all the linchpins and their configurations, all the wave conjugations and their configurations. The wave conjugation, so you understand, is the electric part of the world, is how plasma is the contractive part. All shapes are the expansive stuff that describes radiation's work. The linchpin is the constitution.
What? I don't even know how to unpack that word salad.
Between the two, it's the friend, it's the translator between the big and the little. And I took all these things to his house.
I think that's actually correct. He took buckets of Legos with him because we've seen what he did on The View.
So I thought he would evaluate them. I thought he would send them throughout his friends. And then I watched him go on Piers Morgan and literally say that 99% of everything I said was bathwater, was bullshit. The Howard comma.
He said that afterwards?
Yeah,
or
he said
you guys
this,
getting on together?
He did this after our talk on Joe Rogan, but before our meeting when I went to his house. So I let that go, him saying that 99% of everything I was doing was bathwater. And then he said, the one thing that might be good is this linchpin. But he got there by a mistake, which I clearly showed that it wasn't a mistake. The one.
No, you did get there by a mistake, but it's something that is actually very common in engineering, where they just use approximations that are close enough because exact precision isn't always needed.
109.47. But he said that everything I did was just by accident and nothing had value. So we were able to take the Howard comma.
I don't recall him saying that. Making a mistake isn't the same thing as being by accident. But we also know you didn't build the drone. You had people build it for you, and multi-rotor flight already existed. It's just that your shape made it harder.
Which is the resonance created from the linchpin. We were able to take the Tetrarian wave conjugations, which is the shape of the fractal in itself, and we were able to take the Myrdal shapes and literally rebuild the entire world the way that, according to, well, not rebuild the world. We've been able to take those same things that he called bathwater and apply them to the three-body problem and solve a 300-year-old problem that
Mr. Howard, who still hasn't learned basic math, thinks he solved an unsolved problem in physics for hundreds of years. Is this like your grand unified field equation, Mr. Howard, where you say the absolute value of 1 cubed is equal to pi?
Newton couldn't solve, that Poincare couldn't solve, because they needed a finite space, they needed
So 2 people who were geniuses in physics couldn't solve it. People who have very advanced physics degrees still can't solve it because it's difficult. But somehow you can. Mr. Howard, when I first encountered the 3n+1 problem, I got excited about some ideas thinking, hey, maybe this will solve this, including a very common one most people hit on, which is an indirect proof. If you've gone far enough in your education, what you'll soon realize is that if something were that easy to solve, it would have been solved already. Now, it is possible, if we get computers powerful enough, we may find some positive integer for which the 3n+1 sequence does not hold. But to prove it holds for all numbers is much harder to do. To prove it doesn't hold for all numbers is much easier because we only need to find one positive integer for which the sequence doesn't hold.
Multiplication, they also needed to reimagine how the prime numbers behave. They needed to understand that gravity was just
how the prime numbers behave? Aren't you the person who keeps saying 2 is not a prime number? Mr. Howard, because I know you didn't pay attention in elementary school math classes, a prime number is a number whose only factors are 1 and itself. This is why 1 is not a prime number, because it doesn't have more than one factor. The reason 2 is a prime number is because it has exactly 2 integer factors, 1 and 2. If you paid attention a little bit further, you may have realized that 2 is in fact the only prime number. Perhaps you should look up something called the sieve of, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Eratosthenes, and figure out how that works. It's also a pretty fun programming exercise I might go over on this channel at some point. Although, of course, as a programming exercise, you limit the numbers you use for the sieve.
Effect of electricity. But how could we take the things he said was bathwater and solve the biggest problems in math and in physics when he said it had no physical application, no chemistry application, no application towards mathematics? But we solved all the biggest problems with it, and that's why I gave it to you ahead of time and asked you to run it through your AI.
Oh. Why are all the people who want to run things through AI to fact check things making me want to slap them through the screen?
Yeah, and we did that. I guess the most basic one. Okay, so if I go to someone like you, who's an outsider coming in the scientist world, right, the mathematics world, and you make certain claims, first question the academia is going to ask is, what is your qualification? What is your education? Where did you go?
And while they will ask that, if you have something real, they will at least take a look at it, because occasionally things still come from outside of the relevant fields. It's just much harder to do that now because everything is so specialized.
To, and it seems like some of these guys came out and said, well, that school this, the school that I don't know which one it was, South Carolina or whatever it was, the school, the degree, all this stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Because I went over to South Carolina University, and I took them over at the time I had a company where we were growing diamonds through not high pressure, high temperature, but through chemical vapor deposition. And the conversation I was having with them, and they were talking about giving me an honorary degree, should have been in chemistry, because that's the stuff that we were doing. We were transmuting one thing.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. An honorary degree is just a way to honor you. It doesn't mean anything. Kermit the Frog has an honorary doctorate of amphibian letters. And even if it had been in chemistry, it wouldn't matter. It's an honorary degree.
Into another thing. So when I went on that other show and I had my honorary degree that was given to me, I had no idea it was in humanities. I thought it was going to be in the thing that I went to talk to them about.
So to them.
How can you not know what an honorary degree would be in? And secondly, why would you tout it as a qualification anyway? There is something in the circles I move in that is equally as suspicious, and that is Kent Hovind's doctorate. But at least we know Kent Hovind actually wrote a dissertation to get his doctorate, because we can all go download it. It's grammatically inaccurate. It is the only dissertation I've ever seen that starts with, "Hello, my name is," but it is available. And he did get a degree from an institution called Patriot Bible College for what he produced. And yes, Patriot Bible College is unaccredited.
So to say you don't have a PhD from South Carolina, it's an honorary, right? So it's not like, okay. So to the folks who went to school to see all these different theories, what do they tell you when they explain it to you? What do they say? Because right now I just went online and I typed in, which scientists agree with Terrence Howard? Okay. And mainstream scientific response, Howard's views are widely rejected by academic and scientific communities. His interpretation of math and physics are generally considered mathematically incorrect, scientifically unfounded, right? Independent and fringe thinkers, they gave some folks that are from on the YouTube side that do. Why the rejection? Claims 1 × 1 = 2. And that's the most basic one, right? Where it starts from there. And it goes to some of the other theories that you guys have spoken about. Help me understand how, in your mind, to the average person who hasn't put amount of time that you have put in, credibility after 1 × 1 × 2, 1 × 1 = 2. How do you come up with that conclusion?
Well, if
all right, I don't think Terrence Howard is going to understand what is actually being asked, which is, how do you come up with the conclusion that you have any credibility after saying 1 × 1 = 2? And let's see what his answer is going to be.
If I was wrong, then they wouldn't have made such a big...
Oh, I'm sure Terrence Howard has seen some of the Terrence Howard classics before.
Think about it. But the fact that I was able to show them with their calculator that because they have 1 × 1 = 1,
right,
an action times an action without a reaction, and as a result of it, you get this contradiction with the square root of 2.
Oh my, I can't even believe he's going here. Mr. Howard, there have been plenty of people who told you that this is just a natural consequence of the laws of exponents. If you take any number, raise it to the 1.5 power, and divide it by that number times the first power, you're going to get the square root of that number. I guarantee you, why don't you try it with any positive number that isn't 0 on your calculator? They will all do the loop you're suggesting 2 does.
Being cubed, having the same value as the square root of 2 times 2, which should say a red flag, a herring right away that
There's nothing wrong with this. It's just you have never learned, I'm going to assume this is learned in Algebra 2, why this is.
something wrong with the mathematics, with that being the problem that leads into the distribution of prime numbers, because the number 2, any prime number that you subtract from another prime number always is going to end up in a composite number.
Subtracting an odd number from an odd number causes an even number. I think he's unveiled one of the greatest mysteries in mathematics.
But except with the case of the number 2. That's the only prime number that you subtract from another prime number and you end up in a prime number. Why? Because
Is it because it's the only even prime number and all other prime numbers are odd? And if you subtract an even number from an odd number, you get an odd number.
number 2 is a composite number. But they've changed that by trying to force that into a prime because they wanted 1 times 1 to equal 1. And
Please learn what the definition of a prime number is and drop this talking point.
Square root of 2 being 1.414, they say that times itself will equal. So it's
No, Mr. Howard, the square root of 2 is approximately equal to 1.414. If you talk to a mathematician, they'll tell you the square root of 2 has an exact value, and it's the square root of 2.
all convoluted. None of their stuff makes sense. If I was a student, a mathematical student, or
You would get a failing grade like we believe you already did?
a calculus student or algebraic.
Mr. Howard, I would not start you with algebra or calculus or anything like that. I would start you with like 5th grade level math because that's what you need to learn right now.
Student, and I come in and I show a proof where, okay, 1 times 1 equals 1, and the proof of this is the square root of 2 having a contradiction with being cubed.
Did he just finally admit 1 times 1 equals 1?
Cubed and multiplied by 2, that's a loop. Hi, everyone. My name is Terrence Howard. I'm an actor.
I'm not going to listen to this ad.
The ripples go out, hit the edge, and then they come back. The returning waves are added to the expanding waves. Each returning wave is going to become multiplied even more. The pressure doesn't just expand out and keep going out. It's coming back.
All right, Mr. Howard, there's another definition you need to learn, and it's going to be the definition of the word polysemous. Polysemous is a really big word that just means a word has more than one definition. Multiplication has a very specific definition in mathematics that is not the same as make bigger. Because if you multiply 1 times 0.5, you're not going to get a bigger number.
So you have to include the contraction. You have to include the returning wave. So that's why the volumetric would be different. But like even with what you just did, like if I asked you, what's 0.10 times 0.10? 0.10 times 0.10 says 0.001, right?
Right.
But we know that.
That's okay. I guarantee you're going to learn nothing from math that's in any way accurate from what Terrence Howard is saying. Except by accident. He is right that the square root of 2 cubed divided by 2 equals the square root of 2. He just doesn't understand why.
At 0.10 is a dime.
Okay.
We know that a dime times a dime, 10 dimes times 10 dimes equals $1. Should equal $1.
Not necessarily.
10 times 10.
If you have a group of 10 coins, each worth 10 cents, yes, 10 coins worth 10 cents equals 100. It will not equal 100 squared, because in this case, it doesn't make sense for what we're doing.
No, I know what you're doing. But that is a whole number. A dime is still 10 cents. So 10 dimes is $1. So it's not the same in the dollar sense. I see what you're thinking, like 0.1 equals a tenth of $1.
I'm saying there's a problem with the decimal system.
Yeah, but
oh my gosh, he finally learned the difference between the decimal numbering system and the Dewey Decimal System. I kind of wish he hadn't, because him calling it the Dewey Decimal System was hilarious.
if a dime is 0.1 of $1, let's simplify it, right? But if you tell me, give me 10 of 0.1s, that equals 1. So that means I got 10 dimes. But if you do 0.1 times 0.1, then you get 0.01, right?
0.01.
Yeah, but that's a difference. So to me, the basics of the math, when you went there
that doesn't go off to you? That doesn't seem off? That if we turn it into physical things, that's what I'm saying. Let's turn it. The problem with our math is they've allowed it to be all imaginary. It does not have any physical.
I'm sorry, I'm muted. Mr. Howard, please, if you're going to use mathematical terms, use them correctly. Our math is not imaginary. Math is abstract. Computer science is abstract. My code I write is abstract. I also think Angela Coiler has some of this problem when she's describing artificial intelligence. She is saying it doesn't exist the way people think of it, but instead of saying it that way, or trying to say it's like, hey, this isn't actually intelligence, it's just a simulation of human intelligence, which, to be fair, is how computer scientists formally describe it. A lot of times we'll just use a shortcut, and people get confused with colloquial definitions for what we actually mean. But no, imaginary numbers do exist in math. It is the square root of a negative number, because you can't multiply a real number times another real number and get a negative number.
Resemblance. It's all fiat, where it should be.
No, but I just do
measuring
investment. The way I look at it is,
No, it's not fiat. It's just that the rules are somewhat arbitrary. We've come up with a system of rules that we find useful.
to say what's 0.1% of a penny. What's 0.1% of a penny?
This is probably something where I personally would pull out the calculator, because This is mental math, and I don't like doing mental math.
What's the value of a penny?
What's 0.1% of a dime? It's a penny, right? It gets smaller, right? So that's I don't look at it from the physics.
Wait a minute, 10% of a penny of a dime would be a penny.
That's right.
10%.
So 0.1 is 10%, right? So if you go to the investment side, the argument of one-time ones in investment, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, insurance, it stops right there. But you're going out there and saying 1 times 1 equals 2. And, that...
We're saying that as far since our economics are still based on this linear flat plane geometry,
right?
You can still use the 1 times 1 equaling 1 to.
Wait, did he just say our economics are based on linear flat plane geometry? No, Mr. Howard, they aren't.
Form their economic growth and their economic reactions. But if you're dealing with universal interactions, you have to, our money may go out linearly and we may measure it on a flat plane. But as far as the universe behaving, how energy behaves, energy curves and wraps.
Mr. Howard, as someone who has taught business math, I can guarantee you all of the equations used in business math are not linear. Some of them will result in parabolas, or at least would if you were concerned with the negative side of it. Try calculating compound interest and tell me that's a linear equation.
It's back around itself. Energy doesn't follow a linear path. And all of the stuff we're talking about in physics and science is about energy. We're not talking about a fiat system where they can have arbitrary rules for the money, that anything can happen with the numbers. Something times nothing can equal nothing and violate conservation of energies if you're saying 1 times 0 or you.
All right, let's come up with a basic definition of multiplication here to help you understand where Mr. Howard is going wrong. Multiplication is essentially repeated addition. If you have 3 times 3, you're going to add 3 to 0 3 times. That will get you 9. Now, if we define things that way, if we take 3 times 0, we're adding 3 to 0 0 times. What does that give us, Mr. Howard?
You can multiply by 0, but if you divide by 0, it creates an infinity, and division is supposed
The word is singularity.
to be the inverse operation of multiplication. So
It is the inverse operation of multiplication. And because of the way we define multiplication, dividing by 0 is undefined.
supposed to be able to do multiplying, you're able to reverse that with division. So if you cannot divide by 0, then you cannot multiply by 0.
No. This is a result of the way multiplication is defined. And because division is defined as the inverse, what can you multiply by 0 to get 3, Mr. Howard? It doesn't make sense in the rules we came up with for math.
All of their rules that they break so that they're...
Or put more simply, there it is on the screen. If you have 12 donuts and split them among 0 friends, how many does each friend get? That's division by 0.
Economic pathway can remain consistent. You want to do that. But if you're talking about saving our planet, you're talking about how the universe behaves and how the energy of the ether behaves, then there's very specific associations to the numbers. Each number is alive. Each number has value. It's not imaginary.
Each number is alive. Each number has value. It's not imaginary. Mr. Howard, how dare you slander the number I like that?
Imaginary. It's not intangible. It is going to have an effect. So we have to multiply it according to how the universe does it.
Okay. So I look at it more.
The universe does multiplication now?
more from the investment side, the math side, the financial side, but that's your theory. And by the way, Terrence, the reason why I think it's folks like you are important, very important, because anybody that challenges the status quo, that puts the establishment against the wall to kind of have to prove themselves, I love it. I think Bobby Kennedy did that, and Bobby Kennedy wasn't a scientist; he was a lawyer, and Bobby Kennedy got a lot of people in.
He got a lot of people infected with measles. Robert F. Kennedy is getting people killed, but this is not a political show here.
In the health industry, to be like, wait a minute, are we supposed to believe 100% of what Fauci is saying? We're not supposed to sit there and believe everything Fauci.
Skepticism about anything anyone says is good, but we also have to consider the background. Fauci actually did have a medical degree. He made mistakes, but in general, he knew what he was doing. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a conspiracy theorist, and in general does not. I will give him credit that he is at least pushing vaccination to help prevent further measles outbreaks.
He's saying, and he's not a health guy. So the credibility from the health institution was like, I'm a scientist, I'm Fauci, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Bobby doesn't know what he's talking about. So I would like to see something happen here where we're seeing a lens. This is why I suggested for you and your wife to watch the what was it?
Yes. The Stephen
Greer documentary about
the lost century.
Yeah, the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. So let's go through that. Do you mind just taking a moment and share? You have a certain number of patents. I don't know what the number is, say 30 something patents.
No, it's right now we have over 90 something separate patents. We have 30 different trademarks and copyrights.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. First of all, having trademarks doesn't mean anything other than you've registered a trademark. Having a copyright just means you produced a work of art or something similar that is your intellectual property. You can register a copyright, but even if you don't register a copyright, you have the copyright as soon as you produce something that can be copyrighted. As for your patents, you have somewhat less than 90 because you have 3, I think. You do have some, but some of the patents we're claiming are not products you patented. At least one was invented before you were born. And most are either for the ones you do have are either for children's toys or jewelry.
But most of the stuff are hard patents.
And the patents are.
Well, I don't think James De La Pena moves in the same circles most of us have on YouTube. But if he wants to join us for Bad Science Sunday at 9, when I think it starts, he should go check out Maya Atkinson's channel. Also, if you haven't done so, check out James De La Pena's channel.
They're all in the States?
All in the States. Well, I've got them worldwide. You started following them here, but a lot of them are redundant patents.
Sorry, I was wrong. It starts at 9:30.
In other countries.
What is this, Rob?
That's just how many, according to
94.
ChatGPT.
Okay, according to 94 patents with 60. Okay, perfect. So you got 94 patents. What new findings, what have you found where the average person can benefit from? And if you're sitting there, you said this is worth in the trillions of dollars, and you and I are speaking before, you're like, if another country gets their hands on this,
it's an end of America.
What have you found?
Well, we've been able to innovate. The first thing that everybody already knows about is the tangential flight with linchpin. We have provided tangential flight, the ability to fly around your own center of mass, and unlimited midair bonding. I mean, it's the end of cranes for the linchpin, because no matter how large the project is or how small it is, linchpins can modulate and cover over air, over land, over sea. You have flight vehicles that deal with, that are able to deal with the air or deal with space or deal with water. You have cars for the land, but you don't have anything that is ubiquitous to all of these mediums. And that's what
You didn't know what any of those terms meant, did you? No, we don't have anything that can travel through all those mediums or is ubiquitous to them. Ubiquitous means present throughout. What you mean is we don't have something that can travel through all of those mediums. And there's a reason for that. Because designing something to travel through more than one medium comes up with something that is less effective traveling in both mediums than it would be if it were just designed to travel in one medium. I'd take that course.
Linchpin is able to do. So when I say it's the end of cranes, so you have that. We've innovated flight. We've innovated geometry by having unlimited bonding. We've innovated lighting,
I don't remember going over bonding and geometry. Do you mean chemistry?
We've innovated with our energy systems. And what I wanted to share with you, one of the biggest things that I talked about with the Howard comma, its ability to pull energy directly from the van der Waals or from the 0 point. We've already provided a means to do that, to where you don't have to pay for any energy anymore. The same thing when I talked about beryllium, utilizing beryllium, even though there were some idiot chemists that came out and said that.
Oh, I'm sure Professor Dave will love what you're talking about now, because that's who you're referring to.
That what I said concerning beryllium was wrong, but I dare them to compare beryllium to, or beryllium's reaction to oxygen the same way that magnesium behaves with sulfur.
Mr. Howard, what he was telling you is that you cannot introduce beryllium to the sound of oxygen or something like that in order to do electrolysis. He was also telling you, because apparently you didn't know, is that while most alkali metals will react violently if you throw them into water, beryllium is the only alkali metal that does not do that. And I think someone who has at least a bachelor's in organic chemistry knows a bit more about chemistry than you do, Mr. Howard. I think we as Americans actually need to start understanding the limits of our expertise, and that just because someone can speak confidently, it doesn't always mean they know what they're talking about. Even though I know more about computer science than many other people, I still get stuff wrong. That certainly doesn't mean I'm going to be an expert on, let's say, quantum physics, because I'm not.
The same way that selenium behaves with magnesium, sulfur, selenium.
Oh, I just can't wait for Professor Dave to get a hold of this now.
Behaves with, God, I just lost my thought.
Selenium?
Yeah, no, because.
Can you pull it up?
Magnesium, you have.
Can you pull up the charts, Rob?
Yeah, really quick. The way that selenium.
Yeah, if you can just pull up the periodic table and zoom in.
Selenium's relationship with calcium.
Okay.
The same way that selenium will.
Oh, I'm so glad selenium and calcium have finally decided to solidify their relationship. I know they had that off-again, on-again thing going for years, so maybe they've decided to finally tie the knot. Geez, what do you even mean by that?
Mitigate what's taking place inside of calcium, the same way that sulfur will mitigate what's taking place with the.
Mitigate what's going on inside of calcium? What? Do you mean sometimes we can have two substances that are poisonous, like sodium and chloride, react and come up with a chemical that we actually need for life, like sodium chloride?
Magnesium, oxygen, being the equal and opposite mate of beryllium, will mitigate what's taking place with beryllium, and they will always have a strong attraction to each other. So whatever bullshit that was being spoken by those chemists, they do not know.
Listen, Professor Dave frequently loses me on chemistry. That doesn't necessarily mean he's right. It just means he's had more of an education than I have in that field. Now, I do have enough of an education to know that you, Mr. Howard, do not know anything about chemistry. In fact, after taking one high school chemistry course, that was enough for me to decide after that, even though I had been interested up to that point, that chemistry was not for me.
Know what they're talking about. And the problem with utilizing actual beryllium is it oxidates. So immediately the surface of it gets covered, and so the reaction stops. But if you use the frequency of beryllium to separate the oxygen from the hydrogen, and have small little apertures for the hydrogen to go through, because the hydrogen is
the frequency of beryllium for what? What's the frequency of beryllium? Exposing water to frequency doesn't do much of anything, other than maybe if the frequency is high enough, make the water move. It's not going to cause electrolysis.
Smaller wave.
Unless, of course, it's a frequency of electricity being applied to the water, and that is how we generally do electrolysis in water.
Waveform. Then the oxygen will separate and the hydrogen will separate, and they'll both be usable. We proved that. Science has proven that. Natural phenomenon has proven that, but they want to ignore that.
Establishment scientists has proven that.
They see it in in all of their reactions. That's why they're using a lot of the chemists in a number of the interactions that they have. They'll use beryllium for a particular purpose because it will cause oxidation. And then they have a means by which to reverse.
I have no doubt that beryllium is used in certain chemical processes. Maybe even some cause oxidation. But I am absolutely certain no one is using the frequency of beryllium to cause electrolysis, because that's not how electrolysis works.
That polarization pushes, whatever was oxidated onto it, and now it opens up the door again for the beryllium to work. There's a number of means for it. They've seen it work, but because it is in opposition to the oil and industry world, they're fighting it. And so I brought the proof. I brought the simple proof when I provided for you guys. I've on my website.
This is the sort of thing that always makes me feel kind of guilty, because it makes me wonder if Terrence Howard actually needs to take a couple of weeks of antipsychotics to see if these delusions go away. Now, it is possible this is all just some brilliant act he's putting on.
On Terry's linchpin, there's the white paper on how beryllium behaves and how oxygen behaves.
Who's broken that white paper down?
It's just gone up to my thing. I can't get anyone to do a peer review. I've sent it off to publisher.
Mr. Howard, you are not a chemist. There's a reason why I didn't bother sending that Book of Mormon data science project I did off to peer review. First of all, it was just done out of curiosity. And secondly, I also knew I would need to do a lot more to confirm that the Book of Mormon was more than likely written by Joseph Smith, other than prove it most likely wasn't written by Edgar Allan Poe, because, and by proof I mean loosely proof here, because this isn't like mathematical proof or computer science proof. It's just colloquial proof where we're showing something. Okay, yes, his book did get peer reviewed, but
publisher,
I don't think Terrence Howard pays much attention to YouTubers.
Refused to review it because Eric Weinstein, Brian Keaton, people came out, said the Dunning-Kruger effect. The amount of pain and suppression that's come my way, because all I've tried to do is provide the proof.
Terrence, while the Dunning-Kruger effect was never meant to be used as an insult, the truth is it probably is the Dunning-Kruger effect. When we first start to learn things, we don't know how much there is to learn, and we overestimate our ability. Then we start to learn more. Then we start to despair that we will never know as much as we think we did. Then as we go on, we eventually learn, we'll never know as much as we think we did, but we can at least learn a lot in certain specific sub-areas, even though there will still be a lot more beyond what we know to learn. And Terrence, you haven't even climbed to the peak of Mountain Stupid when it comes to physics, math, and the other topics you go on about. You have to actually open up a book or maybe watch some videos or something that maybe even Professor Dave can help you with before you understand how little you know. Think of it as an actor. Did you start out knowing a lot about acting, or did you find out more about it as you continued to act?
Proof out there. Nobody wants it.
Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where people, Rob, it just completely disappeared on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. People with low competence in a specific area tend to overestimate their abilities, while highly competent individuals may underestimate their skills. This occurs when a lack of metacognition prevents those with low competence. So they're saying you're low competent in this topic. That's what they're saying.
In this topic. This is what Neil deGrasse came.
Yes, you are not competent in these topics. Note that that's not saying you're incompetent in everything. You just don't know these topics. It's not a shame to not know something. We need to start admitting our ignorance again.
Came out and said, and so now he owes me an apology. Why? Because with those same things.
I don't think he owes you an apology. He was very polite and said, this is just flat out wrong. You asked him to take his time out and look at something. He did. He pointed out your many errors, and he did what he would do for a colleague. Now, accepting criticism is hard, but what you need to do is realize you were wrong and go back and perhaps retract your 1 × 1 = 2 proof. That would be a good starting point.
Things that he said had no value. Now we've already put them into a white paper, and we've been able to.
Putting something into a white paper doesn't mean what you think it does, Howard. Neither do patents.
Solve the 7 millennial problems and the 3 body problems with the same equations or substances that he said created the Dunning-Kruger effect.
So every.
Oh, for heaven's sake. The Dunning-Kruger effect is not created by substances. Do you not understand what a cognitive bias is? It is created by an individual's overestimation of their abilities when first learning a topic. Oh, really? Then I look forward to seeing what look forward to seeing what Howard's solution for P versus NP was.
Everything you sent me, everything of the white paper.
I really should actually, if I can find social media, ask him what his solution to P versus NP was. Because that will be some hilarity, I bet, because I don't think he knows what it is.
Papers you sent
all
us,
those papers.
All of them. Every one of these I have, right? Every one of these was sent to Dr.
Yu.
Dr. Yu has it. He's looked at him. So he'll come out here in a minute to give his perspective on this, and he's from NASA. But before we go there, there is a part of me that believes, there are inventions that the government didn't want to bring out because, God forbid, if they did, it would decimate multi-trillion-dollar industries, oil being one of them. I fully believe that.
It needs to go.
Huh?
It needs to go.
It needs to go. But, who's going to release it? I don't know. I mean, look how long it took to find out who killed JFK.
Yeah.
Look how long it took with Epstein and some of these lists that we are looking at. Who did what to MLK? They're still hiding it, right? So for them to release it. When it comes down to Musk.
Have a good night.
What is your opinion on Elon and, him being a net positive to society? Do you have an opinion on Elon?
Well, I think Elon is a genius in his entire approach to dealing with society, first and foremost. And he's proven himself to be very capable as far as finding out where a problem lies and then attacking that problem and bringing the right people to it. I think he would have been very benefited. I was surprised when I didn't get anything from him after I did the Joe Rogan and showed the linchpin because of what he's trying to do in space. One of his problems, though, that I see affecting him is he believes in the vacuum. He believes in the finite, infinite universe, where there's no pressure changes between the planets, that there's just this great vacuum there, and doesn't recognize that this is just like being underwater. Where we are at the surface of the water is like the Goldilocks zone. This is the Goldilocks zone on our planet. Well, within the solar system, there's the Goldilocks zone where the Earth sits, and this fits for us.
The Goldilocks zone is not just where the Earth sits. Mars is also in the Goldilocks zone as well. The Goldilocks zone is just where life as we know it could exist if the conditions are right, because the temperatures aren't too high.
Go out 147 million miles away from the sun, where Mars is. The nitrogen.
He's a cosmologist. He's a mathematician. He's a physicist. Apparently, he's an organic chemist now. I bet he's going to be a paleontologist too.
Has expanded to such an extent, the hydrogen has expanded to such an extent, there's no way to contain that into the body, the flesh of the body, which is necessary in order for us to keep living. Oxygen, everything expands. You'll never be able to bring them back, these 147 million miles, back to where the Earth is. You're not going to be able to do that. Well, the 93 million miles where the Earth is. So anyone that goes out there, that's a wrap for them. Because 15 feet underwater, what happens to the nitrogen? It compresses, or 15 feet out of the water, it expands, and it keeps expanding. So anyone that tries to go out to where Mars is at that low pressure system where everything becomes
low pressure system also doesn't mean what I think it does. It's a term used in meteorology.
Or diatomic, everything is expanding itself out, you are dead. There's no way
All right, yes. Being exposed to the vacuum of space and the cold temperatures will kill you for a variety of reasons unless you have something protective.
Spaceship would have to.
I have never heard him say anything about computer science. The only thing I've heard him get close to that was him not realizing he needed to change the time for the screen time out on his cell phone so it didn't black out when he was using his calculator.
Be so tight, or a suit would have to be so tight that you would not have any motion. But the amount of expansion will not allow you to be able to come back to the Earth. Like if you took something from the bottom of the ocean and you bring it all the way up to the top, and then you try and take.
So apparently he's a moon landing denier as well. I'm glad he's an expert on rocket science now too.
Get back to the bottom of the ocean. What happens to it? It implodes at the change of pressure. We're made for this particular pressure condition at 93 million miles away.
Pressure condition? Can you please actually refine your words, Mr. Howard, to be used correctly? We're made for existing at this particular air pressure would more or less be correct, even though unnecessary. We can actually find a way to change the environment around us in space so we're still at an air pressure we can tolerate. What do you think spacesuits are?
You're not going to be able to have a human being on Mars, plain and simple. We don't have the proper pressure conditioned
You don't think
bodies.
So?
No, it's impossible. You're just going to expand out and blow up. You will blow up.
Well, this kind of doesn't this kind of contradict though? Because on one end, you're saying it's possible to have 0 point energy where oil industry and all this other stuff, and the industry is saying you're out of your mind. You don't know what you're talking about. There's no way, and then here's what Lynchman. This is what we could do.
I can't imagine anyone saying Terrence Howard doesn't know what he's talking about. Honestly, I feel kind of guilty because picking on Terrence Howard does feel kind of like punching down.
Elon is saying, I want to go have, life on Mars or on another planet. And you're saying there's no way that's possible.
No, there's life on Mars.
I'm all for Elon going to Mars. He doesn't have to take anyone else with him. Ideally, we can even have NASA make a rocket for him, and we don't need to waste money on life support.
But the life has changed. The life force changes. The system of water, H2O, changes as you go further out. Two atoms of hydrogen, one atom of oxygen. I guess the further out.
Wait, is he saying the molecular structure of water, the most abundant molecule in the universe, changes based on pressure?
Out you go, what happens to the next one? Does it become 2 atoms of carbon and then 1 atom of sulfur? It all continues.
It's actually worse than that, Titan. He's an electric universe proponent.
Out. The water life principle remains consistent. That's why in Uranus or those far out planets, they still have precipitation as rain, but now it's methane that's coming down. And it's just,
I think he's referencing to something that's almost right, because we do believe that Titan does have storms that are very similar to what happens on Earth.
The water, or the H2O, like what I was saying on Joe, was that the relationship between carbon and hydrogen are the same as the relationship between carbon and silicone, and the same between silicone and...
I know this has been brought up to you before by the professor you were complaining about earlier, who's not a professor, but is a YouTuber named Professor Dave. But silicon is not the same thing as silicone. They really aren't. They are different materials.
And between cobalt, it's the same tone. It's just under a different pressure condition.
I think you mean they're on the same row of the periodic table. And if they're on the same row of the periodic table, and they're arranged in a fashion that would put them underneath other elements in the same column, that just means they'll have similar properties to other elements in that column.
So you can manipulate the entire universe by changing the motion and pressure conditions, because it's all waves. It's not a physical thing. So as far as our bodies are concerned, if you wrapped an entire ship in molecular excitation and change...
You wrapped an entire ship in molecular excitation. I don't even know what that means, but I have a feeling it might be what happened to the Titan submersible.
To where they are no longer part of the system. Yeah. Now you can be out there, but using our traditional methods, you cannot do that. You have to wrap it in frequency.
How much have you followed what he says on how he's planning on doing that?
He's just trying to get...
I haven't followed any of this because it's meaningless.
The people out there, and I think what they want to do is mine that asteroid belt. That's what they really want to do, and that's what
you think the purpose is mining.
Is mining the asteroid belt. There's one asteroid out there called Psyche that's worth...
Aunt Jer, I certainly hope he is not talking about that.
$10 quadrillion worth of tungsten and tantalum and rare earth metals inside of there. That's just in one. So their ability to...
So this one?
He's not wrong that a lot of companies would love to carry out mining of asteroids. The problem is it's just not commercially feasible. This is why we actually don't eat artificial meat, or sorry, not artificial, but lab-grown meat yet. We can make lab-grown meat that is essentially identical to the meat we get from animals. It's just expensive to produce and not commercially feasible.
Psych, yep. So the ability to mine these asteroid belts, gets rid of all the mining on the planet. They want to get to Mars so that they can do some mining, but they don't realize that we don't need any of that stuff anymore.
Why not?
Because what the linchpin brings, by the resonant quality of the linchpin, the Howard comma, what that allows you to do is now have the universal template to put into...
Listen, if there's any more discussions about ship bukkake, I will do nothing but super chat magnet questions to Tapioca Weasel in Maya's stream tonight.
To any situation and open up. That's why it's used for faster than light communication, subspace communication, all the things that we've now.
It's used for faster than light communication. I would love to see that being demonstrated. I would love to see you get a message from Earth to the moon in less than, I think it takes about 2 seconds for that to travel normally. Or get a message out there to Voyager in less than however many hours that takes now. Either Voyager will do, but I think Voyager 2 is more active and more usable right now.
Put in the paper that I couldn't do before. When I first went to Eric and everyone, I was like, well, I'm shy in the mathematics, but I have the geometry, I have the patterns and all this. So what Eric Weinstein gave me was a book on differential equations and gauge theory. Well, what I was able to do with that?
Mr. Howard, I would start for you, and I'm not doing this to be mean, but with a book called Math for Dummies. I have seen you botch basic math.
Now I understand the math enough, and using AI as a guide, you can plug into it and give it the information necessary. Because I'm sure the very first time that they started the quantum computer or the supercomputer, the very first thing they tried to do was solve the three-body problem.
I somehow doubt that was what they did the first time they started a supercomputer. Knowing computer scientists, they probably ran the Hello World program.
But it couldn't solve it. And they tried to solve the...
Also, that's not what they would do with quantum computers. We have run programs on quantum computers now. We have even run programs that would take years on standard computers and got them done in a few seconds. And typically, I get questions on this channel about quantum computing, and I have to say, hey, this isn't an area I know a lot about because I know enough to know quantum computing is not something I study.
7 millennial problems, but they couldn't solve it.
I don't think you know what any one of those millennial problems is. Please tell me what the solution to P versus NP is if you've done so much.
With those computers, but we've been able to solve it by changing the paradigm.
So does P equal NP then, Mr. Howard? Does it not equal NP? If it does equal N, if the sets are equal, what can we do to reduce all our NP problems down to polynomial time? Or what particular problem in the NP set do we know that can't be reduced to the polynomial time, thus meaning the sets are not equal? I doubt you could answer that question because you don't even know what the problem is, and I probably just lost anyone who doesn't know even as much about computer science as I do.
By changing to curved multiplication, by using a finite...
What is curved multiplication?
Space, by redistributing the prime numbers, and
redistributing the prime numbers how?
By utilizing the actual curvature of the universe, we've been able to fix all of those problems.
Okay.
So you've solved all the problems using the curvature of the universe. Huh?
Okay. So let's stay on that, because just yesterday we're having a very innocent conversation. Here's what the conversation was. Conversation is, one of our guys says, oh my God, this is crazy. I mean, I don't know if Terrence knows what he's talking about and all this other stuff.
Oh, I can solve that for him. He doesn't. He's just spewing something confidently without knowing what any of it means. This is why he's a good actor. People are convinced he knows what he's talking about, and the people who do know things in specific fields that he's referencing are saying, he doesn't know what he's talking about, you're just falling for a con man. While the people who don't have enough education will come even into the comments of this video and say, oh, he's doing something brilliant, you just don't understand it. No, he's just spouting word salad. He doesn't understand any of these topics.
Stuff. I won't give his name because, he's out there. So another guy says, I don't know, man. I think some of the stuff he says is, so how do you think the pyramid was built? What do you mean? How do you think those big rocks where you think it was just, big slaves picking it up and put it? I think so. You think men put that up? You don't think they didn't have access to something back in the days? And how come we've not had? So he started kind of going through this. So then you see the debate, right? Your opinion. How was the pyramid built based on what you know?
Well, there's a number of different conflicting ideas on it, but I just saw something very
Yes, and most of them are incorrect.
recently on Lost History, where they were showing that the bubbles inside of the granite or inside of a lot of the material there, they have these little bubbles that come as a composite, that it was not big blocks of granite that was necessarily brought up there, that they were actually mixing all of this stuff together. There's that approach. But then the idea of using...
So the pyramids were built using concrete, which wasn't invented until the Roman Empire. I believe that concrete might have been invented earlier, but I don't think it was used to build the pyramids.
Resonance. Something that we've always been able to use. You can, the same way you're able to blow on a sheet of paper or hum and see something vibrate, that's something flowed. That's something that's always been used. And the amount of songs, like if you think about the walls of Jericho, and they went around it 7 times, singing, hitting a particular tone and using harmonic or sympathetic.
Yes, they have proven resonance can do things like cause a bridge to collapse. But we are pretty sure the story of Jericho that is mentioned in the book of Joshua did not happen, or if it did not happen in the way the Bible describes it, because I believe they have found Jericho and there are settlements at Jericho that date after the battle was supposed to have taken place.
Harmonies to either break or to bring things together. There's a number of ways of using frequency. That's how I think all of that stuff was built.
Yes.
I think it was...
There are indeed a number of ways of using frequency, and you haven't hit on any of them correctly other than singing.
Done using harmonic resonance.
Interesting. Okay, so can we get Dr. Yu out here, Rob, if you don't mind?
Yes.
Can we get him out here? Okay.
Okay. I think that is a good place to end this stream for tonight. I will pick this up on Friday night, unless, of course, I get roped into doing a stand-up comic routine again, which, sorry guys, it wasn't recorded. It went better than I thought it would. But if I do it again, I'll try to have some sort of recording, even if I don't put it up on YouTube. With that being said, go check out Maya Adkisson's stream at 9:30. The other person I mentioned apparently isn't streaming tonight, but also go subscribe to, I can't remember the exact channel. I think it's Better Than Ember. Titan, if you could put a link in the chat, please do so. Well, that's an interesting thing, Purple, because I actually attended like some sort of workshop at the local Pride Center where they had a problem with a comedian who was telling like really bad sexist, racist jokes, and they decided to do a workshop to bring more people in to kind of counteract it, which is an interesting form of local activism. It's like, and to be fair, I've seen this guy perform. He's an older guy. You can't understand him half the time. I don't personally think most of his jokes are funny, and when I can understand him, I'm actually usually very offended by his jokes. So I think we should try more activism like that on the local level. All right, so that's it for this stream. I will see you Friday at 10, I hope. Now go out and write some code.